Welcome back to the Solutions Series brought to you by DoubleRadius and hosted by yours truly, Jeff Holdenred. Once again, we have ICT with us today, Blair from ICT. Welcome back, sir. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me again.
Good. So today we're going to talk, this is part three of a four-part series to talk about ICT solutions. We wanted to split it up because they do so many various things, and we wanted to make sure we covered each one of them equally so we could try to answer more questions and cover more content. But get started today. Blair, you and I were talking, so you are going to be at WISP America, correct?
That is correct. Yes, we'll be attending there. We do every year. It's a great show for us, so we will be present at the show. Yeah,
Okay. So for
I
those of you
personally
that
not,
don't
but my
know,
team will be.
yeah, exactly. I understand completely. But so for some of y'all don't know, there's a group out there called WISPA, and WISPA represents the wireless internet service providers across the country. They do a lot in DC in fighting for the WISP community and everything else. They host two events a year. WISP America is usually on the East Coast the first half of the year, and WISPA Palooza is in Vegas at the second half of the year. So this year. March 6th through 9th, Louisville, Kentucky at the Convention Center. Come see ICT. You're in booth 117, and DoubleRadius is right around the corner in booth 211. So I hope y'all get a chance to come out and see us. But let's dive in real quick here and let's talk about ICT. So over the last two sessions, we discussed, who ICT is. We went over their power supplies, their DC power supplies, and today we're going to get into distribution. So, Blair, do you want to run us through real quick, kind of like the parts and pieces that you guys offer for distribution? So we have the power supplies. Now we obviously have to distribute it somewhere. So can you kind of give us a rundown on what app or what products you offer for that?
Yeah, sure. Um, I'll step back a little bit too on the distribution side for folks that aren't familiar with that concept is, we produce power supplies and power systems which will provide a DC voltage used to power up load devices on your network, whether it's on the tower, at the base of the tower, wherever that may be. Quite often, if not always, the case is that there are multiple devices that require DC power. So typically with our solutions, we'll have one bulk DC power supply providing enough power to power up all of those devices. But in order to distribute that DC voltage to those multiple devices, the best and the most effective method is to have a DC distribution panel. And what that does is it feeds the voltage coming from the DC power plant, the power supply or the power system, into the DC distribution panel. And then there are multiple connection points on the distribution panel. And we have various different panels with different number of outputs. And those are where you connect your load devices to. So now you have individual connection points for each of your load devices. So that's kind of the concept behind DC distribution. It's fairly common in the telecommunications space. So in terms of ICT and what we offer, we've been producing DC distribution panels since about 2010, so about the last 12 years. The difference with our panels and why they've been so widely received and appreciated by customers is they're intelligent. So previously, a lot of the DC distribution panels would effectively, like I said before, take that DC voltage and just give you connection points to power up your load devices from those points. But the intelligent distribution panels enables you to monitor each individual output, the load current for each device, turn devices on and off remotely, and we added that intelligence to provide that type of functionality. In terms of the different models we offer a wide selection depending on the customer's needs. So we have what we call single bus DC distribution panels, and those ones are typically utilized where there is just one DC voltage that is needed at a communication site. It might probably be 48 volts DC, in which case you just have a single bus and the DC voltage is fed in and distributed to your loads. We have various different ones that can provide, fused outputs, different a variety of fuses, GMT fuses, ATO fuses, etc. So depending on the customer's needs. And then we have our dual bus distribution panels, and those ones are used generally when there is more than one voltage at the site. So quite often you have 48 volts primarily for most of your load devices, and there may be some peripheral devices there, maybe two or three devices that need 24 volts DC to operate. So having a dual bus distribution panel enables you to have 48-volt devices connected on one of the buses, and then the 24-volt devices connected on another bus, and being able to monitor all those outputs, again, through our graphical user interface, and control the devices as needed. So
That's cool. And to go back to what you said earlier with the intelligence, so being able to control, each bus or each breaker or everything else, that gives you the ability to remote power cycle your radios, correct?
it does. So you could look at a DC distribution panel similarly to like a network switch, where you've got all the
Hmm.
traffic and you've got individual devices connected to it, and they're managing the network traffic. A DC distribution panel is almost like the switch, but it's a DC type device, and it distributes the DC somewhat. So yeah, in each of the individual outputs on the intelligent versions of ICT's distribution panel, we actually have a relay that you can actually use to disconnect your load devices. So if you have a particular load device at one of your tower sites that is locked up and is non-responsive, rather than having to send a technician to the site, and quite often, in a lot of cases, just go in there and switch the switch off and switch the switch on, and it reboots itself, typically like you see with your router at home. If you ever have an issue with that, you just unplug it and plug it back in. Now we can log in remotely and turn that specific device that's having an issue and cycle power to it remotely if we choose to do so, and keeping all the other devices powered up. So we're not shutting down the whole site. We're rebooting that particular device that's having an issue. Quite often that will bring it back online, and then the site is working to 100% again. So that's the one of the many advantages of having intelligent distribution.
Key point to that is, clients out there, what does it cost? What is your actual cost to send a technician to a tower, right? Being able to troubleshoot, number one, unplug, plug back in, or power off, power back on, or cycle, to being able to have that solve the problem without actually doing a truck roll, almost pays for the equipment itself right then, right there. So
Yeah.
that's a huge benefit in what you guys are doing with your distribution. So that's awesome.
Yeah, and in addition to that, obviously, if your network is down for that period of time, or at least a portion of it is down while you're sending someone out in a truck to that site, that has quality of service implications potentially as well for your people that are using your network. So if you can get that up and running in a couple minutes instead of a couple hours, then obviously your network is better hardened against things that do occur on occasion. I mean,
Mhm.
devices lock up sometimes. In
Devices.
addition to that, a lot of these sites have battery backup.
Mhm.
Um, and so there's a certain finite amount of battery backup available, whether it's 8 hours or 4 hours or whatever you design your site to. So we also have the load shedding capabilities. So if you're on battery backup and your battery voltage is slowly decreasing, we can have it where customers can pre-program our units to disconnect non-critical or non-essential loads at the site, whether it's a light or a lamp or a camera or some other non-network critical load. Disconnect those, keep the critical loads now running for longer because the load on the battery has been reduced. And that way you can keep the most critical devices running for a longer period of time.
Now, in your distribution, going back to your descriptions and everything else, obviously, I mean, you have your, what is it, your 12, basically your 12 ports or your 20 ports is what you offer right now currently, correct?
Yeah, we have a variety to suit different applications. We have on the dual bus ones, we have a 12 output, which is 6 outputs for bus A and 6 outputs for bus B. So again, you could have 6 outputs dedicated to 48, 6 to 24. Some
Mhm.
customers use our dual bus and just connect 48 volts on both sides. I mean, you
Mhm.
can use it that well. And they are provided 12 outputs. And those outputs can be protected by fuses because each output has a protection device in line with it. So if
Mhm.
there's excessive or a short circuit that occurs, that fuse will blow, or we have breakered versions too. So the breaker will trip, just like the breaker in your home. And then you need to go to the site to see what the short circuit condition, why that occurred, that overcurrent condition occurred for that particular channel, and then reset the breaker. So that's the advantage of breakers over the fuses, is the resetability.
Mhm.
And then we have a 20 output distribution, which provides 10 outputs on bus B and 10 on bus A as well. And that's for customers. Some customers have quite a lot of load devices they want to distribute power to. So rather than maybe having two 12 output devices to give you 24 outputs, and taking up 2 U of rack space, we have a 1U device that provides 20 fuse protected outputs for customers that have a lot of devices they need to distribute power to. So a little bit for everybody to try and suit all application requirements.
Perfect, perfect. So now, do you see what seems to be more popular, the fuses or the breakers?
I would say, based on our sales history, people tend to opt for breakers. I mean, we do sell the fuse versions as well. I can't speak for everybody, but I think one of the advantages to the breakers is, again, when a fuse or a breaker trips, you do need to check the side and make sure there's no issue, because it's a protection device, and you should be making sure that there's no electrical fault or anything else occurring. But the nice thing about breakers is when it trips and you determine what the issue is, you can just reset it with your finger and turn the breaker back on. With a
Mhm.
fuse, you need to make sure, obviously, you've got replacement fuses available to you. So it's just a preference on the customer. Some people are used to using fuses, and some prefer to have the breaker option available to them. We do have the ability with our panels to have a sort of what we call, quote unquote, an e-fuse or electronic fuse, in the sense that you can actually set a current limit for each of the individual output channels. So, for example, you may have a 6 amp load, and you can set a current limit of 8 amps and have a 10 amp breaker in there. So if the
Mhm.
8 amps is ever exceeded, we can choose to send you an email alarm to say you have an overcurrent situation on that channel, or shut that channel down and turn that device off as a protection feature. And then you can reboot that remotely. So that's a nice thing. We have sort of a software version of a fuse or breaker, and then we actually have the physical breaker that needs to actually be physically reset by a person. So
Perfect. No, that's awesome. And like you said before, we had our power supplies, and now this is like your power switch pretty much. So we're taking those supplies and distributing it out to the devices. So now we have our power supplies, we have our power distribution, and all of that has intelligence, allows us to manage things, which in my opinion is spot on or needs to be done. So that's a must have for that. So
yeah, I mean, we have demonstration software on our website, which is really useful to go in there and take a look around. You can just click on it, turn things on and off, and get a real concept and idea about the capability of the product. So that's always a nice tool to check out as well.
that's good. That's good. I'll probably have to get a link for you on that one, and we'll get that to marketing so they can add this to the video.
Sounds like a good idea.
No, that's great, Blair. Is there anything else we need to talk about on the distribution side?
I would just say, in addition to, DC power management and turning devices on and off, we do have the option to actually monitor third-party devices, such as, a smoke detector, or perhaps you have a door alarm or a door sensor on your door of your shelter. You can actually input that sensor information into our distribution panel, and if the door opens at the tower site, for example, and you think, well, there shouldn't really be anyone there. Why is that door being open? You can get an email alarm notification or a text message sent to your phone to say, hey, the door's open at this particular. So there's some security and environmental sensing aspect to the panels as well. And then lastly, I'd probably talk about the network watchdog feature, which is really important to a lot of customers, and that is we're able to send pings out to the routers and switches that are in the local area network at the tower. So if your
Mhm.
router locks up, and you can't communicate with the router, you've lost communications to your whole site. Well, our device can continue to ping that router because it's connected to it on the local area network within the site itself. If it doesn't get an answer from that router, it presumes that it's locked up. You can have it cycle power to that router and reboot it automatically.
Oh, that's
So
cool.
in a normal circumstance, you could potentially lose all your communications to that site because your router's locked up. The ICT equipment in the background can be continuously pinging that router. If it doesn't get a response, it will reboot it for you, and then you will get your comms back to your whole site and all the devices at your site. So
That's awesome. I mean, we've talked about Watchdog for years, especially when it comes to wireless devices, but that's a really neat feature for what you guys are bringing to the table as an add-on benefit. So I love that.
mhm.
I learned something new today. That's awesome.
There you go.
Write that note down.
Yeah, actually, we
No,
have a
that's
lot of
perfect.
customers that have used our gear for a while, and then they go, "Oh, I didn't know you had that feature. That's great." So they're always learning some stuff too. So it's good.
That's great. So All right, so guys, that was session 3 on ICT. Like I said, we've talked about power supplies, distribution, who ICT is. Make sure you check back in for session 4. We're going to get into the modular devices, right? We're going to piece everything together now that you know what each individual piece is, and we're going to talk about the modular pieces moving forward. So. Blair, thank you again for being here. Looking forward to finishing with number 4 and wrapping this all together into one giant series. So I appreciate you being here for that. And
Happy to be so.
for those of you that are watching this, reach out to your sales rep, ask questions. We can put you in touch with the right people at ICT to talk to. We have the forms to fill out. It kind of gives everybody the answers to size this stuff. But reach out to your rep. Let's start talking more about ICT. We're thrilled to have the relationship, and you'll see why once you put it in your system. So thank you again, and we'll see you on the next solution series. Have a great day.